p.m. So I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee at 6:30 p.m. on 12/17/2025. If you wouldn't mind, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. You can join me if you like. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, everybody. So we'll start off with public comments tonight, and I have not received any public comments from the community. So we're going to move over to the consent agenda. And I wonder, Amy, do you have a motion for us?
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda of December 17th, 2025.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All right, guys, we're going to do the roll call vote. I vote yes. Amy?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
And Jackie?
Yes.
All right, so that's the consent agenda. Thank you, everyone. The chairperson has no updates beyond the agenda itself, so we'll keep on motoring through over to our student representative report. And I do see Ryan. Hi, Ryan. Take it away,
Hello.
my friend.
Cool. Is Maria in here? Is Maria in here too? Do you see her?
I don't see Maria yet.
She's in the document, so she might hop in now.
Got
Anyways, I'll get started. So a couple representatives from the school committee came down and talked to our student council. I know Mrs. Viverito was one of them. So that was cool. Stuco is gonna start looking into sort of the handbook. And I can definitely bring forward some of that information as well as Ms. Viverito and the others are going to keep coming in and check in with this student council. Also, the pep rally kind of makeup thing we're doing on December 23rd is a student versus faculty volleyball game. And there's like kind of different events that we are gonna run. The student advisory council went on the tour of a new building. I was taking a test during that period, so unfortunately I wasn't involved. And then I know the superintendent came down and also talked about sort of the snow day situation to get some feedback and input from the student council as well. So that's another thing to that. So that's what we got here. So do you have any questions or anything?
All right, and I saw Maria jump in. Hi, Maria.
Hi, guys.
I'm so sorry. We're like speeding through the agenda. We cut you.
Maria could probably talk about. Did you go on the tour of the new building?
I did.
You want to?
Oh yeah,
How was that?
it was really fun. We all like took a lot of pictures. And the structure itself, I think we're not visualizing it as well because not all the walls are put up, but it just looks huge. Like it's just so much space, and we were all like, this is huge. Like this building is gonna be passing period needs to be at least 10 minutes long, or else we're not gonna get anywhere. And I mean, me, the superintendent, and Bella, a friend of mine, we all took a picture with some of the people that responsible for the building stuff. So that was fun. It was a really fun tour. Like it was fun. And then we are doing our pepper rally. Like it's not really a pepper rally, but it's kind of a pepper rally on December 23rd. And we're having fun games like student versus teachers volleyball game, and then potato sack race, and just fun activities like that, like pie a teacher. And we having our raffle ticket sign-ups during lunch, so that's fun, and we're all really excited for it.
All right, sounds great. You guys are cruising into the holiday break.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for our student reps? Yeah, Jackie.
Ryan and Maria, I know we have a few policy related agenda items later this evening, and I was just wondering if you got any feedback or info from students. I know that you have been checking in with different people, so I was just curious if there was any feedback for us as we head into that later in the meeting.
I know nothing that any student kind of came to me to talk about. So I guess that's really all I have for that.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
Okay, great. Thank you both.
All right, so no news is good news, I think, on that front. I also didn't get any feedback from the communities after reaching out a little bit, so we'll get to that unfinished business a little bit later on graduation requirements. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for your report. I also want to just thank you, Student Council, and Mr. Kaiser and Superintendent Downing for hosting Ms. Cohen and I at the Student Council meeting the other day. It's always a great opportunity for us to get to talk with you guys. And I know we discussed you kind of digging into the student handbook and helping us as we move forward to approving that this spring. So we look forward to any feedback you have there. And let us know if you need anything. Awesome. All right. So guys, we're moving right along with the agenda. We're going to head over to the superintendent's report now, and I'm going to hand it over to Superintendent Downing.
Madam Chair, thank you for that recognition. It's my pleasure to bring our report to you tonight. I have a couple of items, and then I'm going to invite Ms. Hannigan, our communication specialist, to speak to the survey trends from fall conferences. So with that, there's an announcement here that I'm bringing to you from our Director of Nursing and Wellness, Mariah Zwicker. And that is we have an opening for a school committee member on the District Wellness Committee. This is a committee that is required under the regulations in Mass General, under CMR 105 CMR 215. And it's basically, this is the wellness committee to ensure that we are liaisoning between the committee, the superintendent, the community around health and wellness in the school district. Ideally, the committee should consist of a school committee member of any of the town that is represented. So in regional school committees, that means it's best to have a representative in each town. However, the regulations do speak to, making a genuine effort and doing your due diligence. So as we have traditionally had one school committee member, I think we've met the spirit of that regulation. So Madam Chair, this is in the regulations to state that the superintendent is to appoint that school committee member. So I'm putting a call out to our school committee members right now to reach out to me, that if you're interested in participating on that committee, as it says in the memo, they meet 4 times per year as led by Ms. Zwicker. And please reach out to me if you can volunteer to be on that wellness committee. It's not a big lift. There's no homework or anything to do outside of the meeting. It's just simply the meeting itself. And it's typically held during the day on Zoom. Dr. Reinhardt, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's every once a month, a few times a year at 3 p.m.
Yeah. So for those,
And it's not a heavy lift at all.
So if you're one of those folks, please reach out to me and the chair. And I would appreciate that. And next in your packet is a memo, a very brief memo about our clerical substitute rate. Sometimes we do have clerical subs in our school district. And Madam Chair, you might remember a few years ago, we came with a few positions that had dropped below the minimum wage when the minimum wage was increased. This is one we missed. Because it is a position that actually isn't utilized too terribly much. And so when this was brought forward to me, I said, yes, I'll bring it before the committee. By raising the daily rate from $100 to $125 per day, that brings us over the minimum wage requirements of the state of Massachusetts. So I put that in front of you and ask for your approval next week, as we can include it in next meeting, as we can include it in the consent agenda. So before we move on to the conference survey trends, are there any questions?
I see Amy's hand. Go ahead, Amy.
Can you just remind the committee how the clerical subrate will compare to the other sub rate that's out there right now?
That's a good question, Miss Cohen, and I don't have that in front of me, so forgive me. But it is not the same rate. Mr. Mulcairn, do you know our rate offhand there?
I'm pulling it up right now, Superintendent Downing. We did adjust the teacher substitute rate a few years ago. We also put into that, I'll call it like a super step, where if you substitute more than 60 days, it increases. So it's 125 per day, and then it goes to 150 per day once you've hit 60 days of substituting in the school district.
We're making it equitable, like regardless of what you're subbing for, is that kind of what's?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Ms. Cohen.
So it's the same as the teacher sub rate?
Yeah, we went to the 125 rate because we needed to get over the $15 an hour threshold.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Amy, if you want to reconsider the substitute teacher rate, we can certainly put that on the planning calendar. If you think it should be higher, we just, just let us know if you want to throw that onto a future agenda.
I think it should be reviewed. I don't know how other people feel, but yes.
Got it. Okay. So as always, guys, we'll put that up for vote at the next meeting. Are there any other questions about that portion of the superintendent's report, wellness committee, or subrate for clerical? All right, so we're going to move on to strategic work updates.
Thank you. It's at this time I'll bring forward our communication specialist and innovation pathways coordinator, Ms. Hannigan, Ms. Bridget Hannigan, to speak about some survey trends we learned from our fall conference surveys. Ms. Hannigan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. The results from our fall 2025 conference survey were overwhelmingly positive across all 6 of our schools. Overall satisfaction levels ranged from 91 to 100%, and families consistently told us they felt well informed about their child's academic progress. At the same time, the survey helped us identify a few areas that we could continue to improve upon. These include conference scheduling flexibility, re-examining conference lengths by grade level and content area, addressing connection issues with virtual formats, and continuing to refine the language we use so that families have a clear understanding of what we're talking about when we say student learning profiles. Both the district-wide trends and the individual school results were reviewed at a recent principals meeting, and principals will be following up with their school communities to share school-specific insights. Linked in the superintendent's report, you will find an infographic that kind of highlights all of the major things that we pulled away from the district-level survey results.
Thank you, Ms. Hannigan. I'll add on to that as we think about our survey strategy. This particular survey was to answer some curiosities we had around some parent feedback with conferences. The feedback was overwhelmingly strong. And so as we think about our annual strategy, this may not be a question we go back to next year because I think we've in general been answered how the conferences are going, but I just thought I would share that. And that concludes our report, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Bridget or Superintendent Downing about the conferences? I see Amy.
Yeah, my question is whether or not the survey assessed how many parents participated in the conferences. I was just kind of curious because it sounds like the people who did were very pleased with the experience, but I'm just wondering about what population of our parent community takes advantage of the opportunity to touch base with parents.
I think I can speak generally to that. Overwhelmingly, our parents participate, Ms. Cohen. I think it would be hard for us to extrapolate an exact number as we can only respond to how many people actually responded to the survey. So, Ms. Hannigan, how many people responded to the survey?
It's broken down individually, so I actually think I have that recorded on that infographic. I would be happy to also cross-check that with the amount of families we had sign up for conferences generally, and I can come back with a more clear number.
As you would expect, committee members, our conferences at the elementary level are attended rather highly to near 100% levels. and then it wanes over the years into high school, where I would probably suspect our seniors have the least amount of participation in parent conferences.
Yep.
That
If
would be
you
really good piece of information to get to just put this all in context. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments or questions? I had a little bit of feedback for this just as a person who participates annually in these and including from my senior, which I did wonder if it was necessary, but I went anyway. And I had a very, very good experience. I saw that it said at the bottom here, this little bullet, one of the areas to investigate is requests for more student work samples to present at conferences. And I know that one of the initiatives that I think Laura's spoken to in the past, et cetera, is setting up kind of a protocol for conferences and how teachers should handle it. I think that for elementary school teachers and middle school teachers, especially with the STAR assessment, feedback that they were able to share, it's like really useful as a parent for me to talk with those teachers because they do have those work samples. I think that it gets harder into the high school because it's so disparate across the disciplines. And so I think especially for the high school bullet might be, it's not disaggregated by level, but I imagine that that is probably more necessary for the high school because in all of my conferences, I didn't see any work samples, which even as a high school teacher, I don't think I bring work samples either. So just something to think about there, especially as it relates to high school people. Yeah, Jackie.
I really appreciate that. I actually did get to see a work sample and I was excited because it was something that I don't think that my student would have just shown me. So I really appreciated that from one of the French teachers. I felt like navigating that role of both a parent and a school committee member is always really interesting. And I really appreciated how prepared everybody was for the parent teacher conferences. I will say one of the things that struck me, and it was part of the takeaway that I had after doing some research around professional development, the half days, and just looking at the scheduling, is the utility of high school level conferences and that some districts have thought about integrating student participation in those, and I actually would have really loved seeing something like that because sometimes these conversations are happening in silos, and so being able to have students represent themselves, knowing that a lot of the communication is funneled directly to students at the high school level. But I really appreciated how energized everybody was, knowing how late it is. Some of those teachers are staying really late for some of these times and then having to come in the next day. So I think collectively, everyone that I saw, especially at the high school and the middle school, were very happy and pleased with the content that they were being exposed to that maybe their students aren't sharing for themselves.
Any other questions or comments? I really appreciate this from Bridget and from Superintendent Downing. Thank you so much for kind of closing the loop on this and bringing us these survey results. It's all very informative, so thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate it.
All right, everybody, we're going to move the agenda now to some new business. So we tabled this at the last meeting just because we had we actually had several people not able to attend the last school committee meeting. So we thought to do the OPEB recommendation review at this meeting might be more useful. And so our budget and warrant, subcommittee chair who formulated an advisory, how long ago now, Scott?
2 years ago.
So OMAC was formed to kind of build out this recommendation on how we should manage our OPEB liability. And so Scott thought it would be a good idea to review it as we head into budget season. So I hope I teed that up enough for you, Scott, but please feel free to begin your presentation and help the committee understand what's going on here.
It was great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, just to provide a little bit of context, I am going to inform the committee that, as Ms. Viverito advised, that this is based on an advisory committee that the school committee put together a couple years ago. And that committee came forward with several documents and recommendations that were presented at the November 29th, 2023 meeting. So I would encourage you, if you were not on the committee at that time, to reference the meeting materials from that date. And there are several documents there. I think the one that succinctly helps frame this issue and help you understand what's going on here is the document titled OPEB Memo Final. It's just 2 pages of reading that will kind of help you get grounded in terms of what this situation is and what the committee recommended we do going forward. So with that in mind, I will attempt to share my screen and go over the handful of slides prepared for this conversation. So OPEB it's an accounting construct that for the organization, in this case the school committee, to recognize some future liabilities that the school district has. In the case of Nashoba, OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. That's what it stands for everybody. And in our case, they're mostly related to life insurance and health insurance payments that the district is obligated to make after teachers retire, but before they're eligible for federal government assistance. There's some Massachusetts laws that govern it and some accounting standards that dictate how to recognize the liabilities. At the end of the day, what the liability represents is a present value of those expected future payments that the district will need to make. And it's an estimate that an actuary calculates every year based on what some assumptions that are prescribed for them. So at the time, a couple of years ago, when the committee came up with a recommendation, the key takeaway from the recommendation was that the school committee should continue to contribute an additional $25,000 each year to the asset account that we have to offset that expected future liability. And until it reaches a $650,000 a year amount, if we continue to follow that guidance, that would mean that we would be putting $125,000 towards that asset account in the fiscal 27. In fiscal 26, the current year we're in, we're actually contributing $100,000. We actually contributed $100,000 to that fund. And then there's some additional recommendations once we reach that $650,000 per year level on what to do thereafter, and some other guidance for future considerations about what to do about this. But those are kind of outlined in steps 3 and thereafter. But we're far away from needing to make those considerations at this point. So, like I said, where we are relative to where we were a few years ago when we first started this, we've already increased from, at the time, we were only contributing $50,000 a year. In fiscal 26, we're contributing $100,000 a year towards the asset account, which means that our balance as of June 30th, 2025, we had a whopping $1.2 million in the asset account, which is going to try to offset a $54 million liability. So just wanted to bring this to the committee's attention, refresh people that were on the committee at the time, introduce the concept to people that might not have been in the committee at the time, and keep the momentum going as far as making regular contributions to this account. Does anyone have any questions?
Jillian, go ahead.
I noticed I think your screen's gone, I should bring it back up, but it looked like in maybe 2019, there was a much higher contribution. I was just curious how it went from, I think it was over 300K down to 50K or whatever it was.
I wasn't on the committee at that time. I'm not sure exactly how we got there. I think before 2019, the balance was 0. And so that was like the initial contribution.
Right. Mr. Mulcairn, when did the OPEB requirement come out of the legislature? Do you know the answer to that off the top of your head?
The GASB standard didn't come in until the early 2000s. Mr. Powell, I think that's in the documentation, the deeper documentation. So it's been in place for a long time. When that initial trust was set up, I think the district had already been guided by auditors at that point to really, this needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Again, in any fiscal year, it's difficult to create money when there isn't some earmarked for it. So yes, the initial contribution I believe came from a surplus operating situation. And we now have a plan. We now have a recommendation that we follow. To Mr. Powell's point, there's also further materials on our finance and operations site, which is just under the finance page. People can see the information that Mr. Powell's group put together in more detail, as well as all of our valuation points if you really want to spend some time digging deep into OPEB. But yes, so it's been in place for a long time. The district was addressing it, but this is now strategically addressing it and putting into place something that can just be followed every year.
Yeah, GASB first came out in 2004. Massachusetts legislated that districts need to start recognizing the liability in 2009. So like you say, that is captured in the documentation that's in the presentation from 2023, November 2023. And one other thing I did want to bring up that's in one of those recommendations is, considerations for funds to put towards OPEB if possible. So one situation that I think we might have missed an opportunity was when we had that additional Chapter 70 money. One of the options that should have been on the table, although we might not have done it at that time, should have been to put the money into the OPEB trust. But, just keep that in mind for future considerations if we ever have another situation like that. That, again, one of the options in addition to putting it into the E&D should also be contributing it to OPEB.
Any other questions on this recommendation? And again, this is just a review of something that we all kind of recognized a couple years ago. So Scott thought it would be a great idea just to give us a little refresher that this is something that we committed to. It's not a policy, it's not mandatory. It's a practice that we think is in the best interest of the district long term. So as Kirk and Ross and their team go to set up the budget, we will be seeing that OPEB line. And Scott, if we are following the recommendation of OMAC, we should see a line item of 125 this coming year, right, Scott?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So Scott, thanks for that. We really appreciate you keeping us honest and true on all of our recommendations. Appreciate it. All right, so here's another really interesting presentation that we're going to hear from the Communications Subcommittee. It is a survey that they put out around how the school committee is communicating with the communities. And I'm going to turn it over to the chair, Ms. Cohen, to tee this up and let us know what's happening here.
Thank you, Chair Viverito. I've got the presentation up on my screen, so I'm just going to share it. Can you all
It's there.
see that?
Got it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the Communications Subcommittee was tasked with assessing the use of the school committee's website and, like Leah said, assessing our communication with the community. So we developed a survey and it was issued the end of the last academic year in June 2025. And so we're going to share out some of the findings and our recommendations, which is one of the goals that we have as a subcommittee for these 2 years. So the survey is linked within this presentation for anybody who's curious and wants to go back and look at what we actually asked. Our goals were, in addition to assessing the accessibility of the information on the school committee website, we wanted to get insight into what information was really the most valuable and important to our community members, and then use that information to possibly reorganize our school committee website so that it becomes a more useful tool, and something that people are looking to use. This is just a quick snapshot of showing that we had representation from all 3 towns. And we had a representation from all 6 schools. And we had 119 responses. So it was a small sample size, but enough to give us some data to work with. So first we thought that we should just, for people who are watching from home and may not be as familiar with the website as we all are, that inform people that yes, the school committee does have its own website and this is where it lives. And when you click there, it brings you to this landing page. And you can see that it's by meeting date primarily is where you're going to find most of the information that you're looking for in there, meeting date and subcommittee. So we asked respondents, had they ever visited the school committee's website, and the majority of the respondents, 64 out of 119, said that they had not. That was really the first piece of information that was useful to know. We also asked them how easy it was to find information on the school committee website. And on this scale, 1 was not easily and 5 was very easily. And you can see that most of the respondents, were answering that it was not easy to find information on the school committee's website. We also asked an open-ended question about what was one thing you wish was easier to access on the website. And then we dumped all that data into a tool that spit out this word cloud as kind of a useful visual to take away some key trends or ideas. And you can see that the meeting is one of the main reasons people are looking to access the website, is find out when our meetings are. They're looking for a calendar, they're looking for the YouTube videos. They want to know what decisions we're making, recaps of the meeting. If we look at this question another way, I just took a screenshot from the survey data itself just to get, so you could all see some of the answers that we got from respondents. And it comes across pretty clearly that people are saying that they haven't used it. They honestly didn't know that there was a school committee website. And that was one of the big takeaways, is that not only were people not accessing it, but they weren't aware of it. We also asked, how could we make it easier to find information on our school committee website? And one of the ideas that emerged was to perhaps start a newsletter from the school committee that's embedded in the superintendent's common email that's sent out on a weekly basis, to include highlights of what's going on or what's going to be discussed at meetings. But email updates was a common theme, of what people are looking for. So we asked that if an email subscription service was offered, that gave you automated updates on school committee activities, which topics would you be most interested in? And this slide is showing that of the topics that were listed, and there were probably 10 to 12, that this is ranked by percentage of respondents. So meeting agendas was top of the list, along with meeting minutes, followed by hearing dates, meeting recordings, and open school committee seats. This is just, for some little break in the presentation here. So then we kind of asked the question differently. If we were going to revisit how the school committee's website was organized, what information would be most valuable to folks? And we gave them this list of topics that's listed along the bottom of the screen, and we asked them to rank it in terms of value, 3 being extremely valuable, 1 being very little value. And you can see that the things that were viewed to be most valuable: the budget, the school committee agendas and meeting minutes, the planning calendar, policies, and maybe a widget where people could click a button and ask a question of the school committee, hearing dates, school committee member information, and there were two more that make it above the 2 mark up here, 2 being valuable. Superintendent goals and evaluation and curriculum work. So we tried to take all of the information from this survey and we said, okay, this is what we currently have showing on the left here, the current design. And we looked around the Nashoba's website and saw that some of the pages had been redesigned with this format where you have a graphic, a topic, and some subtopics. We're like, okay, this could be a model for what we do with the school committee's website and kind of build on an initiative that's already taken place. So this is what the communication committee spent some time discussing, this proposed reorganization. And it's conceptual at this point, but you'll see that we've taken the data from the survey in terms of what information people are most interested in and put the buckets or the topic names above these graphics. So meetings with some sub topics like the planning calendar, the minutes, the meeting materials, the agendas. There's a budget bucket, policies. We're adding one here. We're proposing to add one called questions where you would be able to click on this widget that somebody could submit a question and it would go to the entire school committee. We used a model like this during the building project and it worked well. Hearings, so you could just click on this and see when the dates of the school choice of the budget hearings were. The curriculum bucket would have the 5-year strategic plan, the curriculum guides, the equity report, superintendent evaluations, and then other things where we could, post our goals, open seats, press releases, or whatever else the school committee thought was of value. To summarize, we came up with some recommendations for consideration, and they kind of fell into 2 categories, a push or a pull strategy. In terms of pushing information out to people, there was definitely a desire from the community to have an email subscription service, but it's something that needs further exploration because the platform that we're using right now isn't equipped to deliver that type of service, but it's made it into our recommendations as something to consider. The other thing that we discussed with the superintendent was adding a school committee corner to the superintendent common emails that are already going out. And this would be a place where we could highlight upcoming topics that are coming up in future meetings with the meeting dates and a link to where you could find the agenda and the YouTube link. And then another idea that was discussed with the superintendent at our last subcommittee meeting was leveraging existing communication channels that our towns are already using. And working with them to share our upcoming meeting dates so that they can push those out to residents. In terms of pull strategies, we've talked about the possible reorganization of the website by topic area instead of by meeting date and subcommittee. Adding this widget for submitting a question to the school committee. And then as a final thought for consideration, using some of our existing opportunities like open houses, conferences, and family universities to highlight how this has been, reorganized and making people aware that the school committee's website exists. So with that, I can take any questions or feedback that the school committee has.
I'll just start by saying thank you so much to the communication subcommittee. That was pretty authentic work and I think really necessary. It really targets our goals. So thanks for that, Amy and crew. And Amy, can you just remind everybody who is on the subcommittee with you, who's working with you on this?
Yes, John, Shandor, and Lindsay.
Nice, guys.
Yeah, and it was.
All right,
We're glad to check this off our list.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I know that it's been over a long period of time, so thanks for that. Kirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank the committee and Ms. Cohen. I think it was a great job. Thank you for the hard work you put in. Ms. Hannigan and I had a chance to talk about that this week. Bridget, I think we discussed possibly the June 28th meeting as being an opportunity to come out and show you sort of behind this, before we launch it, how that page can look, and Ms. Hannigan can work on that. Bridget, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think January 28th is a totally realistic deadline. And I can reach out to the subcommittee too with some drafts to get feedback before we get there as well.
That would be amazing. That's much more fast than I thought you'd be able to turn this around. So that would be great. Thank you.
So I know we have our typical protocols, Ms. Cohen, but given that we've all made that decision here, Ms. Hannigan will work directly with you.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
I have a quick question for you, Amy, or maybe it's for Bridget or Kirk. A lot of the things that you're proposing we create links to, would that just be kind of links to pre-existing pages? Like, I don't think we need to have like multiple versions of one thing. So Bridget, is that something that you would just do like a lot of cross-linking?
Yes, 100%. We already have most of those resources. This is just about making them more accessible and, to have the page make more sense as to how to find them.
Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah, Robin.
I really love the new look that you put together. I think it's very clean and kind of sharper to look at, easier to navigate. But in terms of putting out, something in tandem or attached to the superintendent updates for the school committee, who's going to be in charge of sending out that, putting together that school committee updates? That seems like a steady stream of work considering it's done on a regular basis.
I don't know if that's a question for me, but I know we did ask that question. We discussed this during our last subcommittee meeting where we were sharing this presentation with Superintendent Downing, and I think that what the answer was that it would be, well, Kirk, I don't know, do you want to take this? I mean, that was a question we had. I think it was that between you and Bridget, it would be a simple addition to the common that kind of pointed to some upcoming agenda items, but it wouldn't link directly to our agendas because they would not have been posted yet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I honestly think, and I hear what you're saying, Robin. I think we can just simply add on weeks coming up to a school committee meeting, a look ahead of what we'll be discussing. It doesn't have to be in depth. It's just to point people to what is going to be discussed. And then after a meeting, we would just have an opportunity to share what happened at the meeting, just briefly, when necessary, frankly. It just so happens that this Friday, I'll be sharing the work that we did in the last meeting regarding calendar. So that's an example of that.
Yeah, so maybe it's just far less involved than we imagine. It's not going to be like a grand newsletter like Kirk's. It would just be a small corner of it where there is an alert almost so that it reminds people that the committee has done a couple of things or is about to do a couple of things.
Yeah, so Ms. Hannigan and I will kind of play around with what that looks like. So when we come back to discuss this topic again on the 28th, and Madam Chair, maybe we should just put that on the planning calendar to come back and talk about that on the 28th, and we'll show you what we come up with.
Like a draft, you mean?
Yeah.
All right, will do. I see Scott's hand.
Yes. So I also just wanted to add that I appreciate the work you guys put into this and like the accessibility, the fact you're making it more accessible. I just encourage you, Bridget and administration, as you move forward with the form of redesign, keep in mind how it's going to look on mobile devices, because a lot of people access this kind of stuff on mobile devices, and what you guys showed looked great on a computer desktop. I don't know how well that's going to translate to a small phone screen. So just keep that in mind as you move forward with the redesign.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that was a problem at the very beginning, but it has come so far. I want to say too, just a very quick shout out to Bridget and Kirk and the whole team that works on this because the current website is like light years ahead of where it once was a few years back. And the whole design that Amy is keying into, I think was your brainchild, Bridget. And it's just super user friendly. It draws people in. You want to click on stuff, or at least I do. It's very clickable, very user friendly. So I'm excited for that. And I think that the mobile version of it has definitely come a long way over the last year or so. And I know you guys paid attention to that.
I can say I've tested the way that those icons look with the titles. So as long as we use that format, it should be pretty minor with any changes to keep it looking good for mobile.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I just want to take a quick moment to thank Kirk and Bridget for their collaboration and willingness to take the feedback from the community and act on it, because I think this is something that we've been hearing about for as long as I've been on the school committee or longer. And so I am just really grateful that we can work towards the solution and build upon the work that's already being done. So thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from anybody or feedback? Okay, so I put it in the planning calendar for January 28th. We look forward to that draft. Thank you, Bridget. Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you, Ms. Hannigan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, guys, that was it for new business. We're going to move the agenda now to the ever popular finance and operations update. Over to Ross, I believe.
Yes, thank you, and good evening to the school committee. I see that we're about 14 minutes ahead of schedule, and I intend to keep us that way through our section this evening. Alita will be pulling up the November operations report. I just want to let everybody know that obviously this was presented to Budget Warrant Subcommittee already this month. We talked about it. There's no major changes to our projections and how things are going at this point. Obviously, facilities too early in the year, at the end of November still, to predict what's happening there with regards to any sort of heating and electricity. Also with those big pieces with snow and ice removal. Again, substitutes, it's still a little bit early. We continue to learn about people who may be taking long-term substitute needs this year. And then obviously special education, we're keeping a close watch on, but we know that we're likely going to spend down that account even after offsets and grant use. So, and also with athletics, just finishing the fall season, it's a little bit too early to predict there as well. We'll talk certainly more about the insurance and benefits during the upcoming budget season. Budget and Warrant is going to dive a little bit deeper and ask to talk about what are our rates and what are our headcounts at the next meeting, which is actually prior to the budget, and workshop, and sets us up nicely to be able to present that during the budget workshop as well. So again, we're tracking similar to last month, and I'll take any questions.
I'm not seeing any golden hands.
Okay.
Keep it going.
Great. So as Aaliyah's pulling up the slides, just want to let everybody know I gave Suchi, our tech manager, the night off. He only had one small piece, and we've talked about it before, so I'll cover his portion. But Rob Frieswick is here for his last 5-year capital plan presentation, and we'll have Mr. Frieswick do a lot of the driving this evening. But as Alita is pulling that up, I'm just going to kind of get into the first couple of slides, just as far as we'll do a review of the capital process. We'll talk about during this presentation previous requests, where those are at. The entirety of the 5-year capital plan is obviously posted as well. Today is focused on the FY27 requests. I think Alita was just pulling that up.
And Ross, this is something that we do annually because
Yeah.
it's required in the regional agreement.
Yes, we love doing it, but it's also required, obviously. So thank you for that, Madam Chair. The regional agreement does call for us to notify the towns of our 5-year capital plans, which would obviously include FY27, which we're mostly talking about this evening, and certainly presenting it to you as well. So, Alita, you can skip ahead to the essentials of capital process, and I'll start there. So we are always assessing our capital needs. The director of facilities position obviously has a lot to do with this. We learn most of our needs through our preventative maintenance, and Rob can talk a little bit about that if necessary. I do want to highlight what we've done this month relative to the capital process because it's new. I want to thank our representatives and liaisons to the capital process. So Chairperson Viverito, Representative Palema, and Representative Reinhardt, who have helped us and been part of these capital walks. Also, a gigantic thank you to our town administrators, members of capital planning groups, members of advisory boards, FinComs, and select boards. We've had a great representation with this new process this year and really been able to talk more in depth about these before they even come forward through their capital request process. There's been good back and forth questions and a lot of discussion around prioritization. We know that we can't do everything at once every single year. So it's been good to have the back and forth conversation already about what are our priorities and why are we saying our priorities are our priorities relative to the needs of our buildings. So this evening, we're presenting the capital plan to you. It'll go forward to the member towns by the end of this month, and then things move forward. Each of our 3 member towns have different processes for receiving and going through our capital requests, which is why it's helpful to have the school committee liaisons. This year, we're going to do a really good job of updating the school committee and keeping our liaisons tightly updated on what's happening with our requests so that they can not only be advocates, but also be informed as school committee members as to what's happening with our buildings. Alita, if you could go to the next slide. This is where I turn it over to Mr. Frieswick, who can start walking through our previous requests and then our current requests for each of our buildings.
And Rob, really quickly before you jump in, I just want to make it super clear to our members, but also community members who are watching. These capital requests are for the buildings that we don't own. And so the
Correct.
school district does not own these buildings, the towns do. And so in the regional agreement, we have this agreement that we will warn them at this point in the process that these are the things we think the buildings need and that we would like to see on the town warrants when we go to vote at town meeting. That does not mean that every single one of these will make it to the warrant, will get approval from capital planning or be approved by the voters. But this is just the first stage in the process of us saying, hey, towns, this is what we think the buildings need you to do in order to provide the service that we provide to our children.
Yeah, I would, if I can, Madam Chair, just I would elevate the language to a lot of these are necessary. They are critical not only to the buildings that our students are learning in, but we're being good members or good partners with our member towns and letting them know this needs to be addressed now. Otherwise, it will be a bigger cost item down the road. So at that point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Frieswick.
Thank you, Ross. Thanks, Madam Chair and School Committee. Glad to be here tonight, although a bit bittersweet. Over the past 7 years, I've really enjoyed this process, going through the capital, and trying to provide the best learning environment for, the students and staff here at Nashoba. The first few slides, we're going to review some previous requests, in each town. We'll start with Bolton. You can see here in the Emerson building, last year we submitted to replace the flooring in the Emerson building, the VCT tile and the carpeting within the classrooms. The Emerson exterior doors need to be replaced. There's a lot of rot and there's a lot of issues with the doors closing and securing properly. Obviously that can lead to some safety concerns there. Over the summer, we were able to replace the well pump and the controls for the well. There's one well that services the entire FSS campus. That well, I think, was 12 to 16 years old. So we thought it was a good time to replace that on our terms instead of it failing. And we end up in a bad situation where we don't have any water. One of the other previous requests was the network switch replacements. And that will be resubmitting again for FY27. Security camera server replacement is in process. They are formatting the new servers, and hopefully we'll have that live pretty soon. Next slide. Lancaster, you can see there's a lot of redundancy in some of these requests. Security server replacement, again, that's in process. The network switch replacement, we're resubmitting for FY27. The Luther Burbank Middle School, there's some masonry repairs that need to happen, but we've deferred that work, and I'll get into that in the next slides coming up. One of the other requests was, and this came from the existing conditions assessment that we had done 2 summers ago, where we had a company come in and do performance diagnostics on the univents in the classrooms to see what deficiencies we had, so we could make repairs to make sure that those units were running properly, and that's complete. Next slide. In Stowe, we were able to replace the auditorium carpeting, the domestic storage tank that is incomplete at this point. It needs to be done. You can see the camera servers and the network switches. Again, the camera servers are in process, and we're going to be resubmitting for the network switch replacements. Next slide. Building the capital plan, Bolton and Stowe, identify issues and deficiencies through maintenance, ongoing review of useful life. We use our house doctor, architect, engineering firm, vendors, and contractors to help build price estimates. Lancaster, like I just mentioned, we use the spreadsheet that the architect engineering firm put together based off of the existing conditions assessment that we had done a couple summers ago. You can see here that an engineer team was on site for multiple days, used industry expertise in each segment of the systems, and reports, provides priority listings of projects and costs, including soft costs and escalations. Next slide. We'll move into the FY27 request, starting with the town of Bolton. You can see here the Emerson School, like I touched base on the previous request. We're looking to take out all the old carpeting and VCT tiling. It's at the end of its life. In our walkthrough today, the members could see that the carpeting is in pretty bad shape. It's at or beyond its useful life. We've got a project estimate cost of $255,000 for that. The network switch replacement, it's a shared project between both the Emerson central office and the Sawyer building. Again, the network switches are aged, and we need to replace them before they fail. And the project cost there is $173,200.
Mr. Friese, could I just jump in real quick? So just to refresh the committee for those who were on last year, we deferred this in partnership with the towns due to the financial pressures that they were under, and it absolutely needs to happen moving forward. So the lifespan of a network switch is about 7 years, and we're at over 10. So the upgrades we can no longer handle certain upgrades, which puts our system at risk. Also, parts are not available, so as things break down or need to be replaced, there's no guarantee that we can keep the network up and running the way it needs to run without fully replacing the network switch component of our technology program. So I'm just covering that now. It's in each of the 3 town requests, but just want to let you all know about that.
Moving on to the Emerson exterior doors. The doors are, in various states of disrepair. A lot of the thresholds, the door jambs are starting to rot. And we're seeing a lot of issues where doors securing properly, which, obviously could lead to safety concerns if people are coming and going, and the doors aren't closing and securing, and being left ajar. So, that's a pretty high priority. Same thing at the Sawyer building. The Emerson building, we're looking at just over $100,000 for, replacing all the exterior doors, and looking at $170,000 for the Sawyer building. Another item that we have on here is the Sawyer gym floor. has over 20 years of polyurethane that needs to be removed. That process would sand the gym floors down to bare wood. We would repaint all the lines. We could add additional lines like pickleball, things like that. We get into the winter months and the students are inside, and then reapplying the polyurethane after that. Next slide. We're going to move into, I guess if you want to go back a slide, if anybody has any questions before we move on to future requests.
I'm not seeing any hands pop to the front. Let's see. Think you can keep going, Rob.
All right, next slide. In the future request, you're going to see some pretty big numbers here. A lot of our buildings across the district, minus Center School, are closing in on 30 years of either renovation or construction. So we're coming up at the end of life on a lot of these major systems. You can see, in the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years, we're going to need a new roof on the Sawyer building. We stay on top anytime we have roof leaks. We have a company come out to take care of them. We're seeing more and more roof leaks at this point. So we're definitely at the time we need to start the process of looking at replacement there. Industry numbers, we're looking at $3.6 million for replacement of the Sawyer building roof. Sawyer fire alarm system, same thing. That's original system to when they did that building. And as those systems age, parts are becoming hard to find for repairs. So that's something that we're going to have to look into in the future. Anybody that travels the FSS Emerson parking lot and roadways, can definitely tell that the pavement is starting to deteriorate, and that's going to have to be replaced. We'll work with the town of Bolton, for cost saving measures, to try to package that in with road paving projects that they have going on. Here at the Emerson building, we had a company actually come out to do it's a very high level analysis of both the Sawyer roof and the Emerson roof. And that's where these cost estimates came from. And they said, with the condition of the Emerson roof, that instead of a complete replacement, there might be an opportunity to do a roof restoration project that could gain, that would come with a 15-year warranty or 15-year lifespan with a warranty with that, which obviously would be less money, and we're looking at $1.5 million for that. Any questions?
I see Amy's hand.
Yeah, thank you. 2 questions, really. The first is that I recall from previous capital requests for Bolton that air conditioning was on this list for Florence Sawyer and I think Emerson too, and it was like $2 million, and I don't see it on the list anymore, but I'm wondering if it's because there's these other big ticket items that have joined the list. Do you have an answer? Or
yeah, I mean, I did take it off the list. One, to your point, you've got the roof replacement coming up, which is obviously a significant cost. And I think moving forward, because we're doing this in Stowe right now, we're working with the green communities. I think that's a better pathway to potentially get air conditioning within the Sawyer building, working with the planning board, and because Bolton is a green community, to get some grant funding to try to do that.
Okay.
So, it's definitely something that needs to get done. But I think there needs to be a partnership with the town of Bolton there to try to get as much grant funding to do that project.
Okay, that makes sense. The second question was, is there any process within our regional agreement or the way that the system works to set aside money for these big ticket items so that they're not something that has to be funded within one fiscal year? Like if that the roof needs to be replaced and is there any process for that? Can you speak to that?
Ross, do you want to take that?
Ms. Cohen, just want to paraphrase your question, asking if there's any process or procedure or mechanism on our end to essentially build up the ability for these to be paid for. Am I?
Yeah, or to work with the towns to set aside money for these types of known capital expenses, or does this have to be handled on a year-by-year basis where they vote to fund it and not?
So I think the best that we can do is provide good and accurate 5-year capital plans, and then as obviously things come up, reprioritize which years those go in so that they can have a 5-year look ahead on what needs are coming up. I think all towns through these walkthroughs are recognizing some of these bigger ticket items that they need to consider that are now in front of them. Sawyer, the MRE LBMS campus and Hale are all approximately 30 years old. So we're seeing similar things with roofs. So I think it's something that they're understanding and considering. There's no mechanism for us to do anything fiscally on our end other than be good partners and be available and answer questions and provide information and continue to have these good conversations.
I will say that on the walkthrough, one of the things that we talked about was how no town has $3.6 million to, slap on a roof. And so these are projects that, I mean, you guys have all gone to town meeting. It's either you're going to pay for it out of your free cash, right? It's like $20,000 and you can just vote, the people will vote if we want to use free cash to pay for a small thing, or you bond it. And so for these roofs, the towns would probably have to take out loans to do it ultimately. Sharon first, and then we'll go to Jackie.
Thank you. I'm wondering I think in both the Bolton buildings, but also in the buildings in Lancaster, there were door replacements and you spoke about the doors that they don't latch properly. So then we're stepping into safety concerns there. What if that goes to town meeting and the funding for that is not approved, then what is the fallback isn't the right word, but what do we do with that? Given that it's becoming a safety issue at that point.
I think Kirk has an idea.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I can just jump in, I do know that perhaps the best way to address general questions like that is to allow Mr. Frieswook to show Lancaster and Stowe, because that way there's some like-kind things going on and we can sort of address the questions that are specific to each town and then take general questions at the end.
Yeah, so Sharon, hold on to that because it is actually across all the 3 towns.
Okay.
Jackie?
I can wait.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so anything more specific to Bolton? All right, Rob, let's keep the train rolling.
All right, next slide. Moving on to Lancaster, it's the highest priority in Lancaster. We are having an issue with the dry fire suppression system, which is in the attic area over the MRE section of the building. The piping is closing in again, at 25 to 30 years old, where that system is not holding pressure. The way that system works is there's an air compressor that supplies pressurized air to that system. And if there was ever a fire, it would, initiate one of the fire suppression heads and then flood the system. Over the years, because that piping is not in a conditioned space, so between heating and cooling, just from the heating of the day and cooling, corrosion is built up in the pipes because of condensation. And like I said, the system is not holding air pressure at this time. So we actually went out to bid, and the bid numbers that we got back was just under $900,000 to replace all those main lines. We've had, conversations with the town administrator, the fire department, but that is, ultimately the highest priority as far as the FY27 request for Lancaster. As you can see, the network switches that it's across all three towns. We're looking at $120,000 for that. The heating tank, the heating fuel tank, it has a fault in it, so that tank monitoring system needs to be replaced. Anybody that is from Lancaster or goes to the Lancaster building has probably noticed the LED reader board on the marquee sign hasn't been operational for quite some time. We did have a company come out this summer to look at that. Through some conversations, we wouldn't have to replace the entire marquee sign. We could actually just replace the reader board on the lower part of the sign. So that way, we can get more communication out to the community, and the town could, use it as well for, things going on their end. And we're looking at $30,000 for that. Both the MRE and LBMS gym scoreboards are pretty beat up. Anybody that was, went through the walkthrough, we could definitely see that. We could reduce that number. I was unaware at the time, but I guess the MRE scoreboard doesn't really get used at the younger grade level. So, we could certainly, look at deferring that one. But I think it's important that the LBMS scoreboard gets replaced. Next slide. So future capital request, the asphalt shingle roof, it's at, nearing or at the end of its life. That's over the MRE section of that building, and we're looking at $2.5 to $3 million for that project. Some other items, the MRE, LBMS gym floor, just like in Bolton, it's, 25, 30 years of polyurethane has built up, needs to be sanded down to bare wood, repainted, and new polyurethane installed. There's two sections of roof. One is over the gym and the other is over the cafeteria. The type of roof that is on there doesn't need to be replaced, but we could recoat that roof and extend the life of that roof with a significant warranty with that. And that's $350,000. To replace those two sections of roof, we would probably be in that $800,000 range. As you can see here, the masonry repairs, window, door, and sealant replacement, that was the deferred project in the previous request. We pushed that off, obviously, because of the dry pipe system that needs to be replaced. Again, anybody that, navigates the parking lots and roadways down in Lancaster, you can see a lot of deterioration in that asphalt. And again, we'd work, with the town of Lancaster to try to piggyback on their roadway projects for cost savings there. Moving on to Stowe. At the center school, we have a boiler project that we're currently in the process of replacing right now. We have lost one of the condensing boilers. The heat exchanger has failed on it. The company, the manufacturer, all four of those boilers in that building have gone out of business. There is no availability for parts for replacements for any of those boilers there. So we have signed a contract with a mechanical rep and also purchased a new boiler so we can start that process. We're going to go from 4 boilers to 2 boilers. With those 2 boilers, we will still have the same BTU output, but we will be reducing the amount of equipment that's inside that boiler room. Right now, there's 4 primary hot water pumps that are hanging from the ceiling that will not come into play anymore. The primary hot water pumps are actually built into the new boilers that will be at ground level. So if there's ever an issue with that, it's an easy replacement. We have had to replace one of those primary hot water pumps that are existing now, and it's in between $8,000 and $10,000 to replace one of those primary pumps. So by removing or taking that out of the equation, maintenance down the road would come down or be a lot easier to take care of. Up at Hale, the fire alarm control panel is at the end of its life. And we're going to be, requesting to upgrade that. And you can see that up to, potentially up to $100,000 for that replacement. That would be the fire alarm control panel, all the addressable devices, the horn strobes, and all the various parts that go along with that. Over at Center School, there's water system upgrades that need to be made for DEP compliance, both disinfection and corrosion control. So that's something that, is going to be a request to the town of Stowe. One thing with that request is we potentially could reduce the cost of that if DEP will grant us a different type of disinfection method and also corrosion control, which would be less money to install and also less money to operate long term. And you can see the network switch replacement. Again, that's for Center and Hale at $205,500 for that. Hale scoreboard, same thing. It's at the end of its life. It's pretty beat up. So that's one thing that we're going to be looking to push forward for as a capital request at $15,500. Next slide. So you can see here future capital request for Stowe, Hale roof, in the near future needs to be replaced. I had a company come out to do that high level analysis of that roof. And then also I actually had an engineering firm come out to do a more in-depth look at that roof and the roof structure. They took core samples to see what the insulation was like under the roof membrane, and also give some, a more defined pathway on what we need to do to, replace that roof. In cost estimates there, we're looking at $3.7 million. At Hale, the classroom, hallway, office space, flooring needs to be replaced. The VCT flooring throughout the building is nearing the end of its life. The ground level floor, is showing some moisture intrusion. So moisture mitigation should be done prior to flooring install. To reinstall or, do that flooring project, we're looking at, $800,000 for that building. Down the road, that back parking lot at Hale, that's going to have to be resurfaced. And we're looking at $300,000 for that. Hale boiler replacement. This is going to be a project that's going to be in tandem with the town of Stowe and their green community liaison, Mr. Epstein. He's done Omen's work in the past probably 3 to 4 months, engaging with various stakeholders. And we actually were able to, through Eversource, do a comprehensive building analysis. And they've come up with some really good ideas to upgrade the heating system at Hale with a lot of good incentive programs and rebates with that. So I have this in here at $225,000 as a placeholder because I don't know how long that process is going to take. And I want to make sure that, people are aware that, if that is a long-term project, we might have to replace at least one of those boilers to make sure we maintain heat in that building. And future requests for the high school. We are at the end of life with the track, with the track and the turf carpeting. We had Gale Associates come out this fall to give us some budgetary numbers, and we're looking at $1.8 million for the replacement of the turf and track services. In the 5-year capital plan, I actually have that broken down, so you can see what each part of that is going to cost. And I will take any questions.
I'm going to jump in real quick, Madam Chair, if it's okay. Just resources are available. The capital plan is posted with the meeting materials. Obviously, the regional agreement has information as well about how the capital process works. And we're going to continue to update the committee and update our liaisons on this work. I just want to add a note because some people may be asking and thinking about the MSBA and what is available. So there is an accelerated repair program. They're not accepting any more statements of interest until January of 27. So some of these things that are here and available, if the towns want to do a statement of interest, more than willing, but nothing is able to be submitted until a full calendar year plus from today.
I have a quick question for you, Ross. Don't we have a stabilization fund for the turf that we're building every year?
We do. We do. We do not. It was partially spent down, if not, I'd have to get the figures on it. We looked at this at Budget and Warrant a few years ago. It was spent down in 2021 or FY21, so maybe summer of 20 or 21, to recoat the track. And what we've been putting in there, had it matched what previous estimates on replacing the turf would be. But that is now a bigger project. So we're going to review that as part of the budget and talk about whether we want to put more money into the stabilization fund to accelerate the ability to replace that turf field. So something that's an obvious need that we need to talk about as the stadium is not part of the new building project.
I see Amy's hand.
Yeah, it's also about the turf replacement. What's the lifetime on, replacing? So if this were to get funded at $1.825 million for that project, like how long does that turf is expected to last?
So talking with different, industry professionals, everybody says, around that 10-year, you can get a good 10 years out of a turf carpet. I believe that was installed in 2012. So we've definitely gotten our life out of it. Anybody that we've had look at that carpet says that for the age of that carpet, they're surprised on how well it's actually held up. And that's a testament, to the grounds crew, doing the maintenance tasks that they need to do. Where, we top dress it with the crumb rubber when we have to, and they're keeping up with the maintenance on that. But again, it does come to end of life. It's, the actual fibers themselves are worn down to the point where we can't even top dress it anymore because the length of the fibers is so short that the kids would just be running on crumb rubber and, their footing would be compromised at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we have at the end of this year, including the FY26 contribution to the track and field stabilization fund, we'll have just under $500,000.
And the idea is that the stabilization fund is supposed to pay it. So were we just undershooting and like the cost is escalated?
Well, I think at the initiation of the stabilization fund, I think at the time, it may have been on track for a turf replacement. But because the track was resurfaced, some of that money was obviously spent. So we just have to recalculate and sort of just readjust and chart a different course forward. So that can all be part of the discussion.
And my last question on the turf is that I'm surprised to see a high school capital item. I mean, wouldn't that just be money that we bond and then we assess the towns? How does that work, Russ?
Well, if you're going to take debt, you would have to approve that as a school committee, and then you'd have to notify the 3 towns, and they would have their statutory process to hold a town meeting. If you remember this from the building project, it feels reverse. They can hold the town meeting to not approve the debt. They don't have to approve the debt. If they have no town meeting, they automatically approve it. They also have a process to consider exclusion of the debt on their tax rate. So it's a little bit more complicated. We can't just take out debt and pay for it. There's some processes there. The other component of this too is looking at doing this in stages. And if we do it in stages, then how do we accelerate the stabilization fund contribution to make sure we can pay for the next thing? So if we do the turf first, and then we want to do the track, splitting those may work. But you're talking about increasing the operating budget if you're increasing the track and field stabilization contribution each year.
Mhm. What would happen if one town approved it and two towns didn't?
Let me double check that, but I think you're going to have all three towns approve that debt. Yeah.
Which is why it might be more advantageous for us to take the debt and then have them, just like we do with the high school construction.
Even if we still take the debt, all three towns have to approve the debt essentially through that process. So
Okay.
it's not a slam dunk. We can't take debt out on our own. For that, there's those protections and the gatekeeping put in place through regional school district statutes.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel a bit stunned by these numbers. I'm sure anybody else watching this does as well. So I really appreciate Rob and Ross putting this on the table. It's bitter, but we need to know it. I think the roofs are the biggest deal, but perhaps we can go back to Sharon's question about the doors because we're maybe I think, Sharon, the essence of your question is that you're concerned about the meantime.
Yeah. I can answer that, and I'll have Mr. Frieswick jump in. From a safety lens, anytime there's an issue with a door, we try to have, number one, our facilities team address it as soon as possible. There's always on doors that may be more finicky, and also remember, in buildings where there's newer doors, if the frost heaves the wrong way, we might have a door that feels a little stuck or it may not close and it needs to be addressed. So anytime something comes up, we're putting out notices in our buildings to say, ensure that this door is pulled shut or pushed shut all the way, reminding staff through the building communications that come up. But we try to adjust it the best we can and as immediately as we can through our facilities team. We will also sometimes use a vendor to do minor repairs that our team cannot to make sure that the doors are functional. The request that you're seeing, though, is that we're running out of availability in our bag of tricks to address the needs in those doors. And again, what you don't want to do is end up with a critical failure of a door where something falls off the hinges or whatever it may be. And then we're dealing with issues of available egress or those types of things. So again, these need to be addressed from a safety and security lens before there's a critical failure of a door.
To Ross's point, to Ross's point, if a door does get to the point where the minor repairs are not working, we will replace a door. When we have done that, because obviously student and staff safety is the most important priority. So if there is an egress that we can't repair, we just out of operating, we'll just replace that door. We're not going to try to band-aid it. That's just not an approach that we take. So if it gets to that point, the door will be replaced.
Sharon, does that help answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, it answers, so the immediate question about safety, right? That answers that question. And then the more long-term question, which is some of those numbers are really big for the towns to swallow. And you cannot defer some of this work forever. You can't defer any of this work forever. You reach a point where it's a critical problem. So I guess I'm asking a question maybe that doesn't have an answer yet, right? What happens if the towns don't approve and we have a critical failure?
I'd say that's the concern of any capital, whether it's a roof or a door, HVAC system. At some point, it impacts student life and the ability for students to attend. We certainly don't want to have any sort of I'll call it catastrophic event. But I don't think our towns, my impression is that they are very much understanding of the need, and they need to process as their own entities, how are they going to address this at some point. I'm not hearing from anyone through these capital walks that this is not possible. We are having great conversations around prioritization, around partnership to get some of these things addressed. Again, this year, I'm going to do a better job of updating the committee on the status of capital requests. And that's why it's also helpful to have the school committee liaisons working with us, with our towns.
Jackie,
Yeah,
is that what you were gonna say?
Yeah, I just wanted to, just from a process perspective, Sharon, like it was very reassuring to go through and sit down and listen to what Mr. Frieswick had to share, to be able to have our town administrator and select board and finance committee representatives participate in those conversations, because it's very clear that they all have our kids' best interests at heart, and they were asking really good questions about how and what input the district is giving in terms of the prioritization of some of these projects, which is great. And we also had that assessment to be able to speak to some of those numbers, which is reassuring, at least in part for Lancaster. The things that are important too is that we have these critical, high level, high cost, big ticket items, and that there are still these ongoing smaller, yes, they could be looked at as nice to haves, but when you think about just our communities and how important these buildings are to our communities. So to have our select board members and our finance committee members being in those spaces, and us being able to share and highlight, like, here's an opportunity for you to understand like how important our auditorium is, and the lighting system, and like, so some of these things that they are really costly, and they, unlike like a fire system or a roof, like you can't capture that in a number. So that was really useful, I think, for our community to see. And I just wanted to thank everyone for that opportunity, because I think this was a really nice, really informative process for the school committee, but also for our communities.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. I see maybe Amy Cohen has a question. I keep calling you Amy Cohen as if there are two Amy's. Sorry, Amy.
There used to be two Amy's. No, I just want to say I appreciate the capital plan being presented in the Excel spreadsheet with like one tab per school and broken out by year. I think that's really helpful and provides a lot of clarification. One question I had while I was looking at this is, well, what did we request last year? And like, I know that in the presentation, you've highlighted what was funded and what wasn't, but something to consider for next year when this is presented. Maybe you could just show the trailing, like, this is what we asked for the previous year, and kind of show so we can see that it in this view too, that it didn't get funded or what did get funded.
Or what got knocked off.
Yeah,
Also.
what dropped off the list. And then the other thought I had was like, is there a tab somewhere in here that shows the total requests from the districts across all three towns?
No, it's all separated out by town.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any value in that number, if it doesn't really matter because it's going to each town anyway, but.
Yeah, I would say I understand your thinking on that. I think what we can see is we have threads of the roofing across the district. Like I said earlier, these are all buildings that are essentially the same amount of years old. They're hitting that about 30 years. So we see similar threads there. As far as a total across all three towns, I mean, we could put that together. But it wouldn't be necessarily something that the towns could use, because they need to address their own individual needs and working with us on those items.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys, I am not seeing any more questions. The last thing that I wanted to do is one more time thank Rob Frieswick for his amazing leadership in this district. Rob, we are going to miss you endlessly. So thank you so much for everything. You have been an enormous asset, and you have been instrumental in the high school building project. And I know I probably speak for everybody here just to say thank you, and we're going to miss you.
No, I appreciate that. It's like I said, it's bittersweet. I never thought when I started here in 2014, I would have been awarded the opportunity to move into the facilities director's role. I've grown, both professionally and personally, over the years. And none of that would have been possible without the outstanding team, the facilities team, custodians, head custodians, Jim, Todd, Pam. Nothing happens without all of their efforts. The head custodians have really stepped up over the past couple of years since the high school project has started, and I really want to thank them for all their efforts, and kind of taking the bull by the horns, especially in the summertime with the summertime cleaning and things like that. Like I said, nothing short of amazing with the facilities team, across the board. So I appreciate all of their hard work. They're here morning, noon, and night. A lot of stuff happens behind the scenes, and I know it doesn't go unnoticed, by everybody. So I appreciate all the support from this committee, the town administrators, the different, the various boards, especially Ross, Kirk. You guys, you get the brunt of my bad days when I go to your office. Being on the facility side of things, it's everything's an emergency all the time. So they get the brunt of what I have to bring to the table. So, but again, I appreciate everybody's support. It's been a great ride, and I look forward to seeing obviously in a different role, but seeing the high school come to the end of the road. So, but again, I appreciate everybody's support, and I wish everybody a happy holidays.
Thanks, Rob. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Madam Chair, if I may have a word.
Yeah, please.
So we're going to be interviewing candidates for this position, and there's no doubt that we're going to find candidates that understand the systems and the buildings and those types of things. What differentiated Mr. Frieswick, I think, from a lot of people I've seen in facilities is he cares about the people inside the buildings, and that's number one. So we know as we search for the next person that is an ideal we're not going to compromise. And I just want to personally thank you, Rob, for all your hard work and for caring for everybody that walked through those doors. Because any frustration or any conversation we've had in my office isn't because of anything that you wanted everyone in our school system to be safe and to feel safe. So I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So on that little bit of a sad note, we're going to keep the finance and operations update going because we have rate reviews to review. So Ross, keep presenting here.
Nothing improves the social emotional temperature of a room like talking about rates, and share. So this evening I will briefly walk through the proposed rates. And annually we bring these things forward. Why this is important now for your consideration at vote at the next meeting is essentially because some of these things are used within the budgetary process. So our extended learning, we take offsets out of there to help out with utilities and with preschool that in part pays for some of the salaries within our preschool program. And obviously facilities helps offset some things within that. So I'll just briefly step through these. So Aaliyah, if you could just go to the next slide. So the first two slides are just the extended learning proposed rate increases. They're both 3.5%. A few years ago, we did a full market adjustment by looking at other programs. We saw where we were in some places very much under the market and other places where we didn't need to adjust as much. So over the last couple of years, these are now just going up by the same amount, depending upon the number of days that families sign up for. Alita, if you just go to the next slide for the after school. So you see the same rate increase percentage here as well. Madam Chair, I'm going to go through all the slides and then stop at the end for questions, if that's okay, instead of stopping after each. Okay.
That's fine.
Yep. On the next slide, we have our preschool monthly tuition rates proposed. This is also important not only because it helps us understand our budgetary figure for what salaries we can pay out of our preschool tuitions, but also we need to let our families know. They'll be getting paperwork at the end of next month, so it's important to have these rates approved. And again, this is going up by 3.5%. Thinking big picture about both extended learning and preschool, my hope is that leaving it at this approximate rate, will work within the window of the 3.5% likely over the next several years, is that over time just smooths out the increase so that when we do look at market adjustments, we're not making major changes that will catch families off guard. If you go to the next slide, Alita. Facilities rentals are going up 5% again. I'm going to say now and sort of put a stake in the ground that during the next fiscal year, during FY27, we need to have a significant conversation about rental of the new high school and about what are those spaces, what are the needs, what personnel do we need on hand for the auditorium, what personnel do we need to have on hand for the gymnasium. We're opening up a state-of-the-art facility that is not available anywhere else in these three towns and is not necessarily available in any of these surrounding communities as well. So we're going to have a significant conversation about what that looks like and how the rates will apply in the different spaces, because not only is this fantastic for our students, but we also know that this is a beacon of the communities, and we want to make sure that it's being well cared for, and that we have the appropriate rates and the appropriate staffing available when people want to use that building through the facilities rental. Alita, the next slide, please. So a few years ago, we did a market adjustment for athletics. We introduced extracurricular. We also updated parking fees at the high school. All three of those will be reviewed next year for an FY28 rate change. We've left them where they are. We had done the athletics 2 years ago, and I think it had been 6 or 7 years since it had been reviewed. So at that point, we established a 3-year renewal cycle to look at those rates. Food services, you actually don't need to do anything today about that. We can revisit that in the spring as the school year ends and is getting closer. So that's the entirety of the rate proposals. I know those will be up for vote next month, so I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Yeah, so you're just going to ask us to vote on this at the next meeting, which is in January, right, Ross?
Yep, correct. And then we can get those into the registration packets for both preschool and extended learning.
All right, any questions or feedback? Ross, I know that the extended learning is our largest one. Why is it that we feel the need to raise the tuition if that program is operating in the black?
So you always want to consider having a sort of like a surplus within that. You don't want to spend it down all the way, because if for some reason, let's just use the example of there becomes a private entity in town that opens and students are going there instead and our enrollment drops, or over time our enrollment in general is dropping and we can't keep up with our planned offsets, that no longer becomes an option to support the operating budget the way it exists right now. And again, you want to have a little bit of a balance in there. I like to use the idea of the 3-month rule, which comes from the DESE food and nutrition guidelines on how much surplus you're really supposed to carry. We know we're spending ours down in food services, but you want to have that available. Plus, you want to have your offsets available as well. And we also have to keep pace with the increase in staffing and salary needs and those kinds of things.
And do you think that the changes we might approve, I know that we are investigating.
Correct. I'm operating as there's no change, because as of today, there is no change and we can't wait on that. to think about new rates. We want to make sure that we're well prepared and we can continue as planned moving forward.
Any other questions, guys, on the rates? All right, I'm not seeing. Thank you very much for that, Ross. And I think there's one more element here to your presentation.
Yes,
debt
there
update.
is. Yep. Last year, maybe it was the year before, we began presenting the capital debt as an overview outside of the operating budget. We know that you see the figures in the operating budget, but they're technically not part of the operating assessment, but you still see them. It's important for the committee and the public and our town partners to understand what the capital debt payments are going to look like for FY27, separate from the operating budget. So Alita, next slide, please. So again, I just want to go over these so that everyone's aware of what these look like. We'll talk about what the debt payments for FY27 are relative to the high school enrollment, about how that impacts the assessments that we'll see. And then I'll talk about what the potential next stage of building construction borrowing is going to look like for us. Alita, next slide, please. So here's an overview of all of our capital debt that we'll need to make payments on next year. The high school track and field, that's getting near the end of its bond payments. So FY28, so 2 more years on that. The leach field and storage, the fuel storage, the band, that's a bond anticipatory note. So, several years ago, those projects needed to happen. The school district took out a ban for $480,000. You have to pay at least $48,000 or 10% on that ban every year plus interest. And we resell that every single year. So there's very little left on that as well. And then you see the 2 construction bonds. Number 1 was a bond for $30 million, and bond 2 was for $75 million. We have a little bit of an athletic revolving offset to help offset that track and field debt that comes from our gate receipts. And just use the same number that was in there for FY26 and planning for FY27 at this point. But again, this is the entirety of the debt that we'll be paying during FY27. Alita, next slide, please. So in looking at the high school enrollment on October 1 of this year, and considering the calculation for the percentage of debt assessments for FY27, you can see what our enrollment is. If you add up those numbers, you may say that's actually less than the enrollment at the high school. What's going on? Please remember that school choice students are not included in this. Obviously, it's just residents of the town that are attending the high school. And again, there's the language from the regional agreement. Alita, next slide, please. So using those percentages up against the entirety of our capital debt payments for next year, you can see the assessments to each town as they are planned for FY27. Alita, next slide, please. So just a little bit more in depth here. So those of you who've been on the committee may recall the process of taking on new debt. Obviously, the debt was approved back in the fall of 23 through the voting process and the debt exclusions. But we are taking out new debt at different stages as we planned with our bonding group. We met with members of our town boards and town administrators and town offices a few summers ago and came up with the process of looking at staging out the debt for the new high school. So recently I got the updated cash flow from our OPM team, which breaks down our monthly expenses projected for the project. Provided that to Hilltop Securities, who's our financial planner, who helps us sell our debt. And then in tandem with them, also reviewed what's remaining on our proceeds from the last bond and the MSBA reimbursements that we have on hand. So as of today, there's no new debt expected that would hit the assessments for FY27 because we're still going to be spending down that $75 million bond that we took out in February of 25. And we're going to start using the MSBA reimbursements that we've collected so far. People may be wondering, why haven't we used our MSBA reimbursements yet? So as you may know, the reimbursements come in as we spend. We are really in the throes of construction now and have been for a little while. So our monthly return from the MSBA has been increased and we've built up a good balance there. and we're ready to move forward with using that. And then we'll likely borrow in late 26 or early 27, and we'll just continue to monitor our outflows and inflows on this, not only with our OPM, but also with our financial advisors at Hilltop. So at this point, I can take any questions on any of the debt that I've presented that will be assessed in FY27, as well as any questions on the future of bonding for the remainder of the high school project.
Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks for the bond information. So I know it's still a little early in the process, but is there any risk that we need to spend money on the high school late in the construction that we don't have because part of the financing for the project is dependent on MSBA reimbursements?
I understand your premise. What I would say is we would obviously work with our OPM and our financial advisors. It's likely that our next stage of borrowing for the high school will be a ban, which will be a short-term note that will carry us through the end of the project. And then once all of the calculations are done with the full MSBA reimbursement, including their end of project cycle audit, we'll know our final number. And then we'll do a final bond on that amount. So we will do a short-term borrow to cover ourselves. And then whatever the actual number we need is, we'll get bonded over that 30-year life. Well, it'll be less than 30 because if you take out a ban and you pay 2 years on that ban, you can only take out 28-year debt because your total can be no longer than 30 years. But Mr. Powell, that's essentially the plan, is that we do short-term borrowing to ensure project completion, and then we would bond the final and exact amount at the end of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? And so what I see you saying, Ross, is that all of the because you pull out the assessment for the operational budget and you tell each town what they owe for the operation of the school system. And then there's the other line item is, and then this is the capital assessment, which is, they were able to make sure that it's a 2.5 override, right? So like that is precluded from that, 2.5.
Yeah, I can't speak for any of the towns, but all 3 towns passed a debt exclusion.
Thank you.
You know, I think what's more important for us is that when we're presenting the operating budget, that we separate out the capital, the debt assessment, because it's so high now, and it's going to be, and this is new territory. In 10 years from now, it might just be standard procedure that they know that that's in there. But right now, this is new. We just want to make sure we're really clear about it. You know, so I think we've done a really good job of presenting not only with you all, but to our towns about the difference between here's your operating assessment and the change, and here's your debt assessment. Because again, it is more significant, obviously, than it has been in most people's time in the towns because of the new high school.
So I appreciate you wrapping all of the capital items together so that they have that number. Why are you using the athletic sale as an offset here as opposed to, say, putting it into the turf stabilization fund?
So the gate receipts. So part of this is past practice, Madam Chair. Also, you know, there's an understanding within the towns at the time of that project that at least portions of the revenue generated by the new stadium would be used to help offset the debt. Does it probably need a little bit more investigation to get the exact language on that or where or when it was said? No, but that's been said to me a couple of different times recently, especially when we're talking about the high school, even though the high school stadium is not part of the project, but that's come up before. So we continue to do that. Yep.
That's the rationale. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, guys? All right, very useful information. Thanks so much, Ross.
Yeah, and I apologize. We did go over our time, and I'd love to say I can make it up to you next time, but it's the budget workshop, and there's no way I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Super important information, and we needed to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So guys, we're going to move the agenda now to unfinished business. And what we have here is
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
This is the point where you wanted to talk about the monthly finance report.
That's right. Thank you, Kirk, for reminding me. So before I move on to unfinished business, just a small little process question for the committee. Budget and warrant member Cohen thought it might be useful for us to take elements of Ross's report, in particular the operations update, things like, or the operating budget report, et cetera, and putting them into the consent agenda so that they are a part of the meeting materials, but that they are not formally presented to the committee, because these things are presented in detail at the budget and warrant subcommittee meetings, and it is a bit redundant to do it again for the full committee. And so I said, maybe we could run it past the committee and see if we want to switch this up a little bit. Certainly the things that Ross feels should be brought to the committee will still be brought to the committee in earnest. But the things that are presented embedded at budget and warrant, like the warrants, could just go into the consent agenda. You guys knowing that you can pull it out of the consent agenda if you'd like to discuss it at any point in time. But it's just one more way to make us more efficient. So any thoughts on that? I know I ran this past Scott too, so I wanted to give Scott, who's our chair of budget and warrant, an opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, I wish I had a black and white answer for you. But it's not obvious to me. I guess one of the procedural questions I would have would be, how would we decide what gets put into the consent agenda and what doesn't? Would budget and warrants have that discussion as part of our meeting, or would the administration make that decision? How would that get decided?
I think it's a great suggestion so that when you're at your budget and warrant meeting, if you feel like something can just be tucked into the consent agenda because it's so uncontroversial. So maybe that would be the chair in combination with Ross deciding this is something that we're going to put in the consent agenda. And then, of course, the chair and the super at the monthly meeting or weekly agenda planning, they can also make these decisions to remove them from the consent agenda. And then members of the committee have the power to remove anything from the consent agenda in the formal meeting. And so there's lots of kind of checks and balances on the process. So can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Like this new procedure. I'm seeing, Sharon, what do you say? I'm seeing all thumbs up. All right, so let's give it a whirl. I'll let budget and warrant manage that, and then Kirk and I will also, Ross can kind of communicate that to Kirk, and then Kirk and I, as we're making the agenda, will formulate that appropriately, see how it works. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it, because that's what we do. All right, guys, unfinished business. We're going to be talking about the graduation requirements, which was pretty much covered, and there was no controversy there, but the competency determination second reading, I know that Kirk and Jackie have revised it a bit. And Jackie, can I turn it over to you, and maybe you can work with Kirk just to help the committee understand what we're looking at this second reading.
Yep. So basically at our last meeting, there was, I think, a really useful conversation. And from there, assistant superintendent friend reached out, and along with Superintendent Downing, just getting some clarification on some of these key questions that the committee had. And so what you're seeing here is a revised version that I'm going to just turn over to Superintendent Downing to talk through with us.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Reinert, and thank you to Assistant Superintendent Friend for reaching out to Desi. Laura, you're going to jump in when if I miss something.
Yeah, I got it. I'm right here.
So I think I want to amplify what Dr. Reinert said, in that the discussion we had from last meeting actually surfaced some good questions we were able to investigate. So thank you to the committee for your thoroughness. So what you see is we struck out redundant language. The first thing I want to show is to show mastery in the three components. This is based on DESE guidance on how to write the policy, and going back and cross-checking this against the regulations and also checking in with DESE. Indeed, it moved beyond what the regulations say to do, so we do not advise keeping it in the policy. It's important to remember for the committee and the community to remember that this competency determination policy is really a short-term policy for us to cover this bridge time from when ballot question 2 was voted to when the state will come out with their new regulations. So I think in this policy, it's important to note that the experience of our students will not change. And that's critically important to know. And the competency determination and the graduation requirements, you can think of it as a two-prong approach to graduating. The competency determination in itself doesn't mean you've demonstrated the competencies to graduate. It is just the terminology that has been used in the state of Massachusetts to demonstrate that you've met a certain level of competency in those minimum standards in math, reading, and the identified sciences. So in that way, you can see the language was struck out. We struck out then some redundant language as well. Kept the table in to show, particularly in science, that while we have multiple courses listed below, it's only one of those courses that you have to meet the competency determination. We struck out the leveling because the leveling is not relevant. It's irrelevant because the college prep courses meet the minimum competency determination requirements, so then all other courses would as well. And then, of course, the redundant language that defined in each one of those sections. So I think what we have here is a cleaner policy, in my view, that meets both the spirit of what DESE is asking us to do, as well as the regulations here. So with that, Madam Chair, I would recommend that we vote approval of this policy.
I'll jump in and say that the revisions to me seem adequate, and so I thank you for all of that work and getting it there. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Yeah, Scott.
So I just like to say I also really appreciate the striking out of language. I think the new version is much improved and easier to understand. And but the one thing I still struggle with is the course requirements. You know, it talks about you need 1 year each year of English to graduate in math and science, and then down below it only lists 2 English classes and a couple math classes, etc. And I feel like those are sample lists rather than exhaustive lists. So like, shouldn't those lists either be all or none? Like all the courses that you can take should be there, or none of the courses should be there, just because as it is now, I'm not sure what we're trying to say as far as these are some of the courses you can take, or you must take these courses plus others. What's the messaging here?
Mr. Powell, are you speaking to the graduation requirements or to the competency determination?
I'm on IKFE, so the competency.
Okay. So the table itself outlines the competency coursework, and then it's labeled aligned courses as well to say these are the courses that align to what is defined in the table.
But are they all the courses that are aligned, or are they some of them? That's where I'm struggling.
So in English language arts, for instance, it says the equivalent of 2 years of high school English language arts. So freshman English, sophomore English, all those 2 years. In mathematics, it cites algebra and geometry as being requirements. So then those courses are listed. Now, to your point, Mr. Powell, and then in science, it says one of these sciences. Mr. Powell, where I agree with you, where it isn't abundantly clear, and I think that's a design of Nashoba that we can live with right now, is in history. Currently, we offer U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2 as semester-based courses. In our future, and you're going to learn about this when the course books come out later this year, is that we're going to be moving, and it happens in the junior year, we're going to be moving U.S. history to the sophomore year as a year-long course. So at that point in time, the sophomore U.S. history course will be the course for competency determination. We have to write it this way now because some students take U.S. History 1 semester, U.S. History 2 the second semester. Other students take U.S. History 1 semester, and then AP U.S. History the second semester. So we have to have all three courses on there to provide for those two different tracks that kids go on. In the future, there will be just one track, sophomore year-long U.S. history course.
Yeah, so I'd say I definitely am comfortable approving this version of it, whereas last month I was more concerned. But I am also going to say that I accept this as a work in progress, and hopefully an improved version will come in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Agreed. And by the way, that's not that's an effect of DESE just not really having their act together yet. And so this bridge document, I think, is as good as we're gonna get. And I know that Jackie.
I'll remind the committee that the state has advised us that they will be coming out with their recommendation to the governor and the legislature in June of 26.
And Jackie, you did a lot of legwork in looking at policies that have already been approved, and what you're presenting here is much more in line with those versions. So I appreciate that too.
And
Any other
cleaner.
comment? Oh, yeah.
I think that's the piece that I do really appreciate is this much cleaner and clearer, where I think some of the policies that have already been approved, school committees were tackling the same challenge that we had, where we're really trying to really capture as much as possible. And I think that there are some benefits to that, but I think that this cleaner, more simplified, not simplified, but really more just like clear version is really useful for our current needs.
Yeah, Amy Cohen.
Is there, are we voting on this red line version tonight, or is there a clean version of this too? I didn't see one in the meeting materials.
Yeah,
I didn't create, sorry.
No, I misspoke. Dr.
I didn't create a clean copy because there were changes here that I wanted the team to really be able to see in real time, and then also knowing that there could be the potential for changes in this meeting. So I just did not send Alita a clean copy this time.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing a clean version somewhere. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think that you guys can all understand that the stuff that's not crossed out is what will be in the clean version. So thanks for that clarification. All right, well, I think, Amy, we have motions for this, and we're looking to potentially do them separately. So I don't think it matters which order you go in. So do you want to make a motion, Amy, for one or the other?
Yes, I move to approve policy IKFE competency determination as presented tonight.
I'll second that. Any further debate? All right, we'll go for the roll call. Amy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Matt? Lindsay?
Yes.
Robin? I missed you, Robin. Oh, I hear you. She says yes. Sharon?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yes.
It is approved. Yay! Great job, policy. We did it. And thank you to Laura and all of your team for assisting us through that. Let's move on to the graduation requirements. Amy?
I move to approve policy IKF graduation requirements as presented in the meeting materials.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All right, so Amy?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
And Shondor?
Yes.
All right, well done, guys. We have the bridge we need. All right, so let's move the agenda to almost the last thing. Subcommittee report outs. Anything that I'm actually going to let Kirk start because I know that we have a building committee meeting tomorrow night. What can you share with us, Kirk?
Yeah,
Anything?
no new update from the last meeting, but we will be assembling, remind any committee members that are going. I think we may have 7 members going here. At the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Sikansky will be briefing the group that while we're on the tour, that we are not assembled as a body at that time. We are going as citizens on a tour, so we should refrain from deliberation of the work while on the tour. And then the school building committee will gather in the library of the high school at 7 o'clock for the formal meeting.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Closed toe shoes. Don't forget your waiver.
Oh yeah.
5:45 at the trailer.
Yeah, don't wear great shoes. Don't wear your best shoes. I'll tell you now.
All right. Any other subcommittee share outs? Yes, Matt.
So last night, Dear Jay met, and one thing that they have been tasked with is creating an equity decision-making tool. It has been looked at, revamped, gone through, and last night it was voted to have it approved unanimously. And so Dear Jay has asked me as the liaison to, again, let the school committee know that that tool is going to be available. They're going to have it updated onto the Dear Jay website. You can click on that to access the tool. They've also asked me to bring that tool into our policy subcommittee meeting moving forward to use it as almost as a pilot and kind of look it through the lens of just 3 different touch points of what's working. It's a living and breathing document, so things will be changed accordingly. But they wanted me to let again the school committee know that it is there and ready to be used based on kind of what they were tasked with from the equity audit.
Fantastic. So I look forward to hearing how that pilot goes maybe at your January meeting. I know you had a couple of policies coming down the pike that weren't as pressing, but you can kind of pilot it there. I know, Matt, at the Dear Jay meeting that I attended a while ago, the hope was to make the tool as user-friendly as possible and even pare it down a little bit so that it wouldn't be too cumbersome.
Yes. So it is extremely pared down. It's color coded as well, which is fantastic. It's like almost a front to back document that goes through with checklists with very specific questioning for anyone using the tool. One of the aspects we're going to look at is it user friendly? And also in terms of the tool, are there things that, again, having some background knowledge, because it was recognized that not everyone's at different points in their journey around equity and what have you. So the question in the back of their minds is, would it be helpful for them to create some sort of video that could be accessed at any point in terms of hey, here's the tool, here's how it could be used, just to kind of give people that's background knowledge if needed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We appreciate that work and Dear Jay's perseverance in creating the best tool possible. So thanks, Matt. Any other subcommittee share outs? All right, not seeing any. I am going to move to the planning calendar, and I'm just going to project it here myself. So hopefully you guys can see that. We are in December 17th now, and now we're moving over to January 14th. January 14th will serve as our annual budget workshop, and so we do try to keep the agenda light otherwise. We will vote on what is that capital submittal update? Kirk, do you know?
Ross, capital submittal update?
Just updating the committee, on the submittal of the capital items. I mean, it won't be significant because there's, between now and then, there's very little time between the time I submit them and the actual budget workshop, considering the holiday.
Got it. Anything that anybody thinks is very pressing and can't wait until the 28th? Yeah, Sharon.
This isn't a pressing thing, it's a question. The 14th is the budget workshop, yes?
Yes.
So is that in the past, we've done the budget workshop as remote and switched the order of the meetings. Is that going to be the same? Or are we going to do the budget workshop in person?
So my understanding is that both meetings of January are remote. Alita, is that correct? I think I saw that on the calendar, like the school committee meeting calendar.
Okay, so on this one, it says it's in the conference room. It just didn't get updated there.
I think that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right. But we'll double, I know for a fact that the budget workshop is remote. The question on the table is the 28th remote? I believe it is, but I will update you guys ASAP on that. So the 14th, you guys can mark it as remote, and I will do the same right here.
Leah, I'm looking at the meeting calendar
Yes.
and it's not clear actually. I thought it was gonna say it's showing it as in person, but it's actually like a light green color, which is reserved just for the budget workshop. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, so it doesn't say either way. But Kirk, isn't it true that we like to do the workshop remotely because it is actually not to disparage your presentation at all, but it is a
No.
bit taxing. And so to have everybody in the comfort of their home, that was kind of the logic.
Yeah, it's actually worked quite well in terms of just efficiency and asking questions. And so, Madam Chair, you have the authority to determine location of the meeting. So all you need to do is declare that it's a remote meeting and then we will schedule it as such.
Guys, I love seeing you so much in person, but I am going to make an executive decision that both January meetings, considering potential weather problems too, will be remote unless there is significant objection. Hearing none, let's move forward on that. No, I'm just kidding. If you have an objection, let me know. Amy, what did we want to put in the parking lot? A rate review for substitute teachers?
yes, good memory, yes.
Okay. Anything else, guys, for the parking lot or otherwise? All right. Oops. All right, that is all I'm showing for this evening. So I'm going to move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jackie. There's no discussion for this one, so we're just going to vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Scott?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yes.
Jillian?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
And Amy?
Yes.
All right, guys, I hope you all have a great holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate. Be restful, be peaceful, and